And so another trip begins. This time, we're heading to WSBG over in Vegas, I guess. And as a great start to our trip, as would be expected, we have a 3-hour delay to our flight. Got up at 4 a.m. in the morning because, you know, let's be on time to our 6:45 a.m. flight. It's myself and Shira. I'm sure you'll see her soon enough. Shira from Quacklope. I'm sure you'll see her soon enough in this video. But my getting up at 4 a.m. and on the road by 4:45 and at the airport by 5:15 was all rewarded with a 3-hour delay to our flight being bumped to 9:45. The pilot is sick. Well wishes to him, and we'll be late. We'll be late to WSBG, the World Series of Board Gaming, but I don't know what happens at this video. This is the start of my trip. We'll see how the rest of it goes, but a good start. In any case, I'm bright and cheery because that's what happens in the morning. Sometimes, depending on the day, I've had my coffee. That's usually all I need, and so we'll see how this trip continues from here. WSBG, the World Series of Board Gaming. Now, before I dive into this more, before I get into it, and I will get into it, timestamps as usual if I can figure out an actual pattern to this that makes any sort of chronological sense. But before I get into that, just full disclaimer that I believe next year they're doing some sort of VIP program where I get a link and people will sign up through my link some way. I don't know the exact details. They haven't told me, but I believe something's going on in which if you sign up next year, I get a perk for it. Understand that going in, just so any biases are out of the way. That said, as of now, this video won't have any links to that unless they get them to me quickly enough, and so I wanted to talk about it. But just understand the bias, the conflict of interest before I dive into it, because I thought it was very cool. I want to see it grow, and I'm going to say a lot of nice things during this video, so just understand that conflict. That said, let's go ahead and dive into this. The World Series of Board Gaming. The World Series of Board Gaming, and again, timestamps is general, so we can jump around to any relevant section, but World Series of Board Gaming was an event that just happened this past, well, for me, this past few days. For you, depending on when this video goes up, I don't know exactly when it ended, but we just had the World Series of Board Gaming in Vegas, the very first of its kind, and this was the first year of it. Hundreds of people attended and competed in effectively a contest to see who is the world's greatest board gamer. From those that showed up, at least. That's the general premise of it. There was $41,000 of prize money given away, $25,000 to the first place, $15,000, nope, $25,000, $10,000, $5,000, and $1,000 to the first 4 places, respectively. And then other players all got other options, including things like rings. So, for example, anyone who won their game got a ring as being that winner. If you are the winner of the Wingspan tournament, you got a ring whether or not you made your way to the Final Four or not. Just being the best in your game. I don't want pings from my computer. Let me mute that over there. But just basically, whether you are the best in your game was the first criteria. The way the system worked, the way the structure for WSBG worked, is there were 16 games, of which most are on the table here. Not all of them, because a few of them aren't currently here. Most of those 16 games are on the table. And so, for example, you could enter and say, you know what, I think I'm the best at Great Western Trail. From there, you'd have to prove that you're the best by facing off against all the people, divided into tables of 4. Not always 4, but let's say tables of 4. So tables of 4, you'd have, let's say, 256 people, and those 256 people would be reduced to 64 winners at the end of that. Those 64 winners would be reduced to 16 winners after they competed another table of 4. Those 16 winners are reduced to 4 winners. Those 4 winners are reduced to a single winner, and at the time you've survived your 4 or 5 games, everything depending on the player count, the game in question, but the time you survive the max number of games, you are the best player, last one left standing, and you get a ring for being the greatest Great Western Trail winner. That's the theory. From there, that gives you 16 winners, 1 for each game, and all those winners get paired off into another pool where they're all fighting off against each other in a game that they are not the best in. So, for example, the Great Western Trail winner will not be playing Great Western Trail. Instead, they'll be playing one of the other 15 games while they are the winner of their game. That's true for all of them, effectively ensuring that no player gets picked as the person for their game. So you had 4 random games picked, and then the people who, well, 4 random games picked, making sure that none of the players for that game who won that game are in it. So in other words, the Great Western Trail player and the Wingspan player and the Blood Rage player and the Seven Wonders player might now be playing Gaia Project, but they're not playing any of the other games, ensuring you now have to be good at least 2 games. From there, you enter the final round. You now have 4 winners left. Each of those 4 winners has won 2 different games. Inherently, that's the way it works. The math works out. You've won 2 different games, which means your 16 games now only have 8 left available. From those 8, the 4 players all have a veto option. If I think I'm just really not good at Catan, or I just don't like the luck in it, I can veto Catan. which means maximum 4 vetoes, because the vetoes are not public, they're all private, which means they might all veto the same game. So you have a minimum of 1 veto, maximum of 4 vetoes, which means now you're left between 4 and 7 games remaining, possibly fewer depending on how things worked out, because you could have multiple ring winners, we'll talk about that. But generally speaking, you'll have between 4 and 7 games remaining, of which 1 will be randomly picked, and those 4 winners will now have to play that game, resulting in the person who wins at the World Series of Board Gaming had to be the best at their selected game, and then good enough to win at the other 2 games as well. And that is the person who wins $25,000. Second place in that game wins $10,000, then $5,000, then $1,000, and that's what happened with Dune Imperium being the last selected game. That's the general premise of the World Series of Board Gaming, and it's something that when I first heard about it, I was skeptical as anything. Skeptical as anything about the whole premise of this thing, because it sounds like a scam almost. Like, who's giving away prize money for board games? And so when they first reached out to me, going on, what, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, however far back this was, when they first reached out, I basically said, hey, let's hop on a call. Dice Tower was involved apparently in some way, so like that's enough of a testament to me. I mean, if Tom Vassell is not necessarily signing off on it, but he's involved, he's already done some degree of research. So I spoke to them, I had a lot of conversations, and eventually I felt confident enough to start talking about it. But all at the same time, while I was talking about it, it still felt like something different and foreign, and not something I really got fully behind and fully into until I was there experiencing it. I like the idea of it. The idea of it's cool. Hey, you know, board games are growing. I like to see more ways and manifestations in which it's growing. But then I finally went to the World Series of Board Gaming, and day after day, the excitement of what I was becoming a part of was very, very, very cool. And more importantly, it was very, very, very friendly. That's something that can't be understated in a game, in a genre in which we're suddenly moving into competition, in which suddenly everything has to be counted and checked and looked after, in which suddenly there's a motivation to cheat other than simply wanting to win, but now there's a financial motivation to cheat and a financial motivation to just be a tool to everyone. I didn't see any of that, or at least very, very, very little of it. Some elements of board gaming have been changed. I sat down for my first game of Seven Wonders, which I lost instantly, by the way, just for the record, just so on the same page. Didn't make my way to the second round at all. Granted, I did lose to the person who then won the entire Seven Wonders tournament, so there is that savings grace, but make no mistake, I would have lost anyway. That just happens to be a better story. But I sat down to play Seven Wonders, and everything had to be a little bit more fine-tuned. Everything had to be, here's where the money goes, that gets traded to the other players. Here's the exact sequence. That player shuffles, that player deals. These players have the opportunity to cut. Suddenly there are these extra rules and regulations in place that made it feel a little less fun. A little less 7-1, a little more watched. At one point, a player put down a card into the wrong pile. They effectively put down a card that they meant to sell, and they put it down into their wonder pile. And the problem is, at that point, they flipped it, and by the rules, they have to jump it. They have to get rid of the card entirely and not even be able to sell it for 3 coins, which the players at the table were all very chill and very friendly about, and they allowed him to sell it for 3 coins. But it's like suddenly you have this interesting motivation where it feels a drop less like a friendly game because there are rules and motivations and money in play, and the whole thing felt a drop different. But the flip side is everyone was very chill. Everyone was very cool. Everyone was very friendly. And the hype at this convention grew day after day. Now, there are different things going on here. The first idea is that everyone's competing here. Everyone's competing, and they have these main inner ring events. They also have these outer ring events, where effectively you have the opportunity to engage in other prizes, other opportunities. You know, prizes for discounts to be here next year, or just generic stuff. They had random things where like, hey, who has the most kids? Who's been married the longest? Getting me like little $50, $100 gift certificates. They just had a sense of camaraderie across the whole event while trying to keep everyone involved. Dice Tower West supplied the library for the gaming library for the event, so you had, you know, 3,500 games sitting there on the shelves, ready access to check them out, and it was a smaller convention in size, maybe 1,000 people there total, maybe, between guests and contestants and everyone there. It was not a large convention, but it also led to a very homey feel and a very large access to a library while having access to a great room to play things in, and the opportunity to sit down and talk and play with others. I've been to a bunch of conventions by now, and this one by far was the friendliest and easiest to just sit down and interact. I was able to walk down hallways with random people who just like wanted to sit and talk, and I had the time and opportunity, contrasted with a convention like Gen Con where I'm running from meeting to meeting and just feel not great, having to like have very short conversations. This was an opportunity to be like, you know what, forget having a conversation down the hall, why don't we sit down and play a game? It was more fun, it was more engaging, both with anyone, with fellow content creators, with friends, I've actual friends who I have in the space, with you know, from I don't even know, from any number of just different people in the general space, being able to just sit down and just say, hey, we're about to start a 3-player game of this, we have a room for a 4th player, just come and grab a seat. It was very friendly and very relaxed, and the whole atmosphere of everything was incredibly chill. The whole thing was hosted at Bally's in Las Vegas on the Strip, and that leaves the opportunity for, you know, whatever else you want to do, whatever shows you want to see, whatever experiences you want to have. But overall, the convention just felt warm and friendly. And day by day, the sense of excitement grew. That first night, they had 7 Wonders and Acquire. No, not Acquire. Acquire was second night. 7 Wonders and Splendor. 7 Wonders and Splendor was the first night.
I won the first ring!
So, I mentioned I got stomped on in 7 Wonders, and just a minute ago, I'll throw some overlay footage here, but you saw them just give away the ring to the 7 Wonders winner. What I didn't mention is, fun fact for me at least, is that's the person who stopped me in 7 Wonders, got absolutely destroyed, and he won the whole tournament, which I'd say makes me feel better about myself, but honestly, I expected to lose no matter what. It's just good luck that I lost to the person who happened to win the entire thing. But that's the first ring event. We saw 7 Wonders, we saw Splendor being given away. Tonight we're going to have Acquire and Dawn of Spaces Marine and Wingspan and one other, but we'll see. Yeah, a whole bunch of things. It's a fun, exciting event. The whole entire thing is very different. It's very unique. It's the first of its kind. Kind of wish I had entered more games at this point, but I also probably would have just lost more games, so there is that. At the end of the first night, they broadcast certain events. This is where I'll link to the World Series of Board Gaming YouTube channel down below, but you can see some of the events that were live broadcast, as well as some of the events that will be slowly edited and going up over the course of the next several days, weeks, months. I don't know exactly the timeline, but all the final games were filmed and recorded and will be in some way put together, so you can see all the finals. That final 7 Wonders game, that final Splendor game, that final Acquire game, the Brass game, the Catan game. You'll see all these over there. But they had that opportunity to see those opportunities. You had the very first event with Shira from Crackle and Stephen Bonacore broadcasting the very first live-streamed finale for 7 Wonders. The next day, I sat down with Stephen and we broadcast through Acquire, and it's an interesting opportunity for me, like, just to be able to sit down in front of a game and just talk through it to whatever degree of possible professionalism you can have, while also understanding that the players you're commentating on know more about the game than I ever will. Acquire is a game I've played, it's not a game I'm good at. And so, it's just entertaining to be a part of this. And then the next morning, the very next morning after the show, to walk downstairs and to have a room full of people see that ring being given to the winner of 7 Wonders, to the winner of Splendor, and to see them get a ring for being the best at their craft. Again, from the people who showed up, but that's on you. You should have showed up too, because it's an opportunity to be part of a convention that was fun, that was engaging, that was like no other convention I've been to before. It was definitely one of my favorite convention experiences, just in the sense of both the excitement of something new, as well as the smallness of just being able to interact with people. Not so small that you felt alone, but not so large you felt overwhelmed. The level of interaction you could have with others in so many different ways, while having that shared experience of something new, and it very much felt like something new. Day by day, the event would go by, and it would be more and more exciting each day. That moment when you had the first double ring winner. Yes, there was a double ring winner. There was somebody who was the best at 2 different games, not 1. But not only that, there were 2 double ring winners. There was another double ring winner of somebody who was the best at 2 different games as well. They sat there, they played their first game, they won Splendor, and now they're a contender for one of the other games, and they have to sit there and they have to figure out, hey, by the way, I made a big mistake. Not necessarily a mistake, just calculated planning, because I only know 12 of these 16 games, and the problem is you don't have a veto for your second game. So if you don't know your second game, if luck of the draw is such that you're playing a new game for the first time, even though you know 12 and you're diving into 16, I mean, the luck of the draw is against you, you are eliminated from that game if you don't know the rules. There is no teacher. You have to know at least enough of the rules to be able to go through the experience without having to ask every 2 seconds, what do I do next? Which led to a fun experience when the winner of Splendor on the 2nd or 3rd day of the convention walked up to us and was like, hey, here are 5 games I don't know. Who can help me with teaching me these games over the next few days? And so we scheduled the next morning, we sat down and played Brass Birmingham with him. The good news for him is that he then won the second event. He won a second ring playing in Dune Imperium, which is great, because that meant he now had two options, effectively, of which table to play at when those were chosen. The downside is he got both the seats at the Acquire table, which is one of the 4 games he didn't know. which sucked for him. Sorry, Gray. In any case, just the excitement of these events playing out, the excitement of those double ring winners, the excitement of watching this all unfold. That night, Saturday night, I believe it was it Saturday night? I'd have lost track of all time. Saturday night, let's go Saturday night. You have all these 16 ring winners lining up with people cheering and applauding for the whole thing, and not a sense of, again, this is the thing, if you saw this event and if you thought this is not my hobby, you're not alone. I've had that same thought too, the idea that I don't play games for money, I play games for fun, and that's true still now, but that general sense of camaraderie is watching people just be excited to be part of something very, very cool for the very first time. That sense of accomplishment of other players, of being able to see them and almost feel like invested in their outcome. I've sat here and made fun of sports for years, but I would be lying to you if I told you that by the time we didn't hit the end of that first day, I didn't have people I was rooting for. I wanted Gray to win. I had sat down, I had played Brass Birmingham with him. Not only did I want him to win, I wanted him to get Brass Birmingham and win because I taught him the game. That sense of like personal attachment of look at it, I helped. And then even when Gray was eliminated, I still had my favorites, you know, between watching different players who came in from any form of different backdrops of life and how they ended up there, the stories behind them, a 50-year birthday present, a general sense of just another YouTube channel trying to grow the audience and the hobby, different people in different ways, finding your favorites, picking your favorites, and wanting someone to win, rooting for a victor. Whatever degree of personality that attracts you to one person or the other, it was friendly. It was just genuinely friendly and just genuinely, it was very, very cool. The whole experience is cool. Watching those 16 players, the 16 ring winners line up, watching the games selected, the 4 random games, which ones will be selected, ensuring the winners of each game are not at those respective tables for those games. Just the entire process was very cool to watch it unfold. And then that final day, watching the final champions face off against each other. Watching them all go on to win their second game. Not their second game, but like the second game. If you wore Great Western Trail and now you're playing Dominant Space Marine, watching you go through that. And then heading into the final and trying to figure out which games were vetoed. We got a double veto on Terraforming Mars. How dare they? Terraforming Mars is a fantastic game, but it got vetoed. Maybe because even if you know Terraforming Mars, you're sitting there thinking, maybe I know Terraforming Mars, but I don't know Terraforming Mars. Someone else will know Terraforming Mars far better than I possibly ever could or would. And so there's a double veto for Terraforming Mars. There's a veto for Great Western Trail. I don't remember the last veto. I don't know. There was a moment of panic as people sat and wondered if Dominant Species Marine would be picked from the hat, because Dominant Species Marine could have been picked, and this was the game that was the least picked by all the players. The least players had played Dominant Species Marine. From all the games at the table, it was just the least selected. If that had been picked by the players for the final round, I don't know what kind of madness we'd expect to see, because players didn't have any time. They went directly into that final round from finding out what the game was selected. If you were one of those 4 final winners, you had the opportunity to practice that night for the remaining games that you had left, and that was it. It was very, very cool to watch the whole thing unfold. And then watching Dune Imperium get picked from the hat, which Dune Imperium is a fantastic game. Granted, I believe Rise of Ix is a better way to play it, and Rise of Ix was not present. In fact, the only 2 games that had expansions in them, we had Terraforming Mars with the Prelude expansion included, we had Seven Wonders with Leaders expansion included, both often considered to be the best ways to play those games, but some games, the expansions are newer. Rise of Ix is a great example of an expansion that is generally well-liked, not by everyone, but generally well-liked, but it's still new enough that not everyone has had the opportunity to dive into it, and so it wasn't considered to be selected along with those games. And so Dune Imperium gets sit down for the final table, and Tom Vassell sits down to commentate on it with a rotating string of people jumping through the room to comment on the game with him. And you get to watch that final session play out. You get to watch the people at the table making their moves. Moving at a brisk pace, honestly, considering the fact that there's $25,000 at stake. Moving at a brisk enough pace and watching it go from throughout the entire experience. You can see this live streamed over on the WSBG World Series Board Game YouTube channel. You can see it, well, not live streamed anymore, but a recording of the live stream. But you can see the pace as every player at one point or another seems to be a genuinely viable candidate for the experience. And then eventually Han Xi Li becomes the first World Series of Board Gaming winner. I'll try to link to his YouTube channel down below. I believe his YouTube channel is, it's a terrible pun. It's like no pun, I'll find the name of the YouTube channel. There's a little bit of a pun where it sounds like it could be one thing or the other. But either way, I'll find that. I'll link to that down below. But Han Xi Li wins and becomes the World Series of Board Gaming champion. $25,000 with, I believe, was it Cliff? I think Cliff was in second place for $10,000. Was it Brent, I hope I'm remembering his name correctly, Brent getting 5,000, and then Luca getting 1,000. Whole bunch of different originations from the nationalities, making it really genuinely the World Series of Board Gaming, the World Series of Board Gaming, not just the United States of America Series of Board Gaming, but genuinely hosting people from all over the world in their origins or where they live. I believe we had, I don't want to get them wrong, so I'm not gonna quote them, but it's just the entire thing. And then when Hanshi Lee walked into the room and everyone exploding in applause for him, again, a sense of friendliness and a sense of, I've used the word many times tonight, but camaraderie. It was very, very cool. The whole event was very, very cool. I absolutely will be going back next year. I think I'll be a few days late. I'm pretty sure it starts over Yom Kippur, which is a high holy day for Jews. But so I'll be a little late to it, but I definitely will be there because it was one of my favorite convention experiences. Very different than the madness and the fast-paced, just craziness that Gen Con is or was and will be. But friendly, and different, and exciting. And I don't know how many people will be there next year. I don't know what size this convention will grow to. I just don't know. I don't know if it'll still be a niche thing. And at the end of the day, you know, 1,000 attendees is small compared to most board gaming conventions. And part of that's, I think, the different nature of the beast. The fact that you have people competing for money in a way that feels like it's not necessarily always in the spirit of the hobby. But as someone who thought that, the convention felt friendly. The convention felt together. I have a sense of pride for someone else winning, which is bizarre. What sense of pride should I have for that? None. None. I've made fun of sports fans for years for this. Not actually made fun of because that'd be weird, but I don't have an affinity for sports. I don't have a drive for sports. It's not your team. It's not your people. Who cares? Oh, you live in the same city as it. Whoop-de-doop-de-doo. Why do you have a sense of pride in it? But yet somehow I have that sense of pride here. Maybe I just like board games. Maybe that's just the secret to it all. But it was very cool. I thought it was very, very cool. I thought it was very friendly. I thought it was very warm. It managed to maintain that sense of friendliness. I don't know what differences will happen next year. I know there will be differences. I know there will be things that are done differently in terms of anything. The size will be different. I know they're already looking into different ways as far as how the competition will be handled. Different ways as far as how the interactivity, you know, the chat for the live streams wasn't able to be, the commentators weren't able to see the chat. Maybe that's something they'll be adding next year. The sense of schedule. There'll be lots of things. This was the first year. And there'll be lots of things that are improved upon in different ways. And also, while you're at it, these 4 games are added to the list. They removed 4 games. I believe they removed Blood Rage and 3 other games. I only remember Blood Rage, because who removes Blood Rage? What kind of animal is that? I think they got rid of Dominus Piece of Marine too. But they added Patchwork, Cascadia, Casa Burgundy, and Arc Nova. None of which I pretend to be very good at, but maybe I'll actually try. It's interesting, because this is one of those things where it goes both ways. I heard people talking about how they sat there and played 102 games of Azul on Board Game Arena to prep for it. There was a 7 Wonders contestant who downloaded the app and played 7 Wonders hundreds of times because it only takes 10 minutes to play in preparation for the event. And that's not necessarily something I want to do. But then again, I do love Casa Burgundy. I'm not saying I'm good at it, I'm just saying I love it. And I do love Cascadia, and I'm happy to play that a lot. Patchwork is great. Am I good at Patchwork? I don't really know. I mean, by what standard? I don't think I'm good. I don't think I'm good at any game by any standard, but I guess I'm not walking into the World Series of Board Game with an intent to win, and honestly, for the sake of my own mental sanity, I may specifically not bother. Maybe I'll sign up for an event, but I don't know if I'll bother trying or competing in that sense, because I don't want to change the way I interact with the hobby. But speaking to somebody who hasn't yet changed the way I interact with the hobby, I just thought it was a very fun event to be a part of. And again, reminder that I'm biased because at some point in the future I'll get some form of something if you sign up for it, so just take that into account. But I thought it was very cool. It was a lot of fun. The sense of tension was there. The sense of excitement was there. And again, I'll say it one last time because it's worth saying. The sense of camaraderie was very, very much present the entire way through. I hope it's something you're looking to go into next year. I want to see this event grow. Selfishly, I want to see the hobby do well. It's one of those things I was talking to one of the event organizers and I was like, I'm torn, because on the one hand, I want to see this event to be 4, 5, 10 times the size because I thought it was very cool. On the other hand, I also think it felt very small and warm and friendly in a way that we might lose as it continues to grow. So I'm conflicted. Maybe we just get to 3 times the size next year. Maybe that would be a nice compromise. Still small and friendly, but not yet too large. We'll see. I know that this is an event that they plan on continuing to do for a very long time, and I think it's something worth trying at some point or another. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.